Hi, everyone. I'm Brianna Wagner, and I'm the communications manager at Lawyer One. And today I get to sit down with Mr. Jeff Weinstein, who is a Texas-based personal injury attorney. How are you doing today, Jeff?
Brianna, I'm telling you, I was so excited about the opportunity to chat
Yes.
with you and appreciate everything that you and everybody at Lawyer One does to help people find lawyers.
Yes, and we appreciate you as well. So I'm very glad that you can sit down with us.
Special what you guys do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So why don't we just start? I know that you've been practicing for 32 years. A little bit about your background and what drew you to becoming an attorney.
Sure, thank you. It seems like yesterday. You say years. I'm like, oh my God, this is before Brianna was even a thought blower. But I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. Went to high school in Fort Worth. I've never lived outside the state of Texas. You know, millennials all move all over the place. I went to college at the University of Texas in Austin. I always thought that I was going to be in my grandfather's hardware store. That's what I was going to do because, you know, culturally growing up, the hardware store was over on the south side of Fort Worth. It wasn't the best part of town. But back in that day, everybody in the family, you know, nice Jewish family, we're like the Italians, like everybody else. I mean, everybody went to work. So you're 10 years old, you know, dad and grandpa load up in the truck to go to work. You get in there too, you go. And so I grew up in this hardware store where everybody knew my grandfather's name. He was the nicest man I ever met in my whole life. He loved people so much. He loved helping people. If they didn't have the money to do the project they were working on, he'd give it to them. You know, he'd ask them to come back and maybe pay him back someday. He didn't, but he never kept track of it. He never worried about it. And so I learned a lot of great lessons about helping people. And so when I was in college, I studied finance, and I really wanted to be an international banker. I had this really cool thing. I was going to, even though I've never really been out of the state of Texas, I'm going to move to Europe. You know, speak 5 languages. I mean, the whole bit. Never came to fruition because in 1983, when I was getting out of college, we had the collapse of the banking industry. People don't remember, we used to have these savings and loans. There was a total collapse. I mean, if you think the recent collapse of the banking industry was bad, it was horrible, really bad. And so my option was, you know, no job, go back to the hardware store where my grandfather had made it pretty clear that he couldn't pay me. And so I decided to go to law school.
Now, wrongful death claims are something that you have seen a lot throughout your career. What really defines a wrongful death claim in the state of Texas?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Let me just say, the 2 words together sound so horrible, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you just hear wrongful death, and it just sounds horrible. People call here, and they don't know what it is. They know a loved one has been tragically killed, and they're looking for answers about how to put the pieces back together again, Brianna. You know, and so when I think of wrongful death, and I've said this before, and I'm sure it's not appropriate, it just sucks. The idea that somebody calls and they've lost a loved one and they need you is a very special moment, because I then have the opportunity to use my entire toolbox of skill set to figure out how to help people put the pieces back together. But I think, you know, the one example that everybody can think of is, and you just never think it's going to be your day, is, you know, your husband gets in the car to go to work and you get the call from the trooper who says, you know, Brianna, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but your husband was involved in a horrible collision and he didn't make it.
Yeah.
And I mean, your face tells it all right now. I mean, you and I are just talking about a hypothetical, but you can feel it. You know, all the energy in life has been drained out of your body. So the honor of representing people in that situation is tremendous. It's tremendous, you know. But it's tough, and I got to tell you, as long as I've done it, and as many times as I've done it, I've never felt like, oh, this is just one more person that we're representing who passed away just, it's a whole tragedy all over again that just replays itself.
Right. And it's not, I mean, obviously it's not a great thing to even talk about, but unfortunately it's something that, like you said, people don't notice until they are in that situation, that they are entitled to damages and things like that. So it's important that we do talk about it. Would you say what are some examples besides car accidents that could lead to wrongful death claims?
Sure, you bet. I mean, there's a whole gambit. I mean, you're working as an electrician, and you're on the job, and somebody drops something from up above, and it on someone, God forbid, and they pass away as a result of it. You got folks around here in Texas, you know, we have a lot of oil, and so you have people working out in the oil fields, very dangerous, you know, a mile away from where the drill rig is, and the drill rig starts up and nobody, you know, no one communicates a mile away, and the drill comes on, it, you know, and comes around and God forbid hits somebody, knocks them out. You know, it's horrible, horrible. But you can think of many, many different situations other than car wrecks where people pass, they get electrocuted, they drown. I mean, it just, the list goes on and on. But basically what you're talking about is anyone that dies and it appears as though the negligence or the actions of another have caused this injury.
In Texas, who is eligible, family members are eligible to file for a claim like this? And is there anyone who's excluded from being able to file?
So you've got wrongful death, you've got survival, right? A wrongful death, I like to tell people it's like a ladder. A wrongful death, you go up the ladder and down the ladder. Up the ladder is your parents, down the ladder, your children, okay? So siblings, brothers and sisters cannot collect in Texas for a wrongful death, but survival is the person's estate. And you don't have to go race out and file an estate. The minute somebody passes away, their estate is created basically by the mere fact that they're no longer with us. And then the estate kind of goes out to the sides. So then you get to go up and down the ladder and out to the sides. But the easiest way to figure out who heirs are to a potential victim is by way of what's called an affidavit of heirship, where we literally just list out, you know, are you married? Who are you married to? Are you common law married? You know, that's a big thing now. You know, you got a lot of people that are common law married. And then you go to, you know, children, stepchildren, you know, how are these people related? Parents, you know, did they adopt you? And so they're, you know, actually your parent, etc. So yeah, it's everybody's tree. It's is unique, but it's pretty simple if you just kind of go through and figure out how everybody's related. And by the way, sometimes you can't represent all those people. Sometimes, you know, it might be better if you're divorced and God forbid a child dies and you're the dad and, you know, mom's got a lawyer. Dad might want to get his own lawyer because you have potential conflicts as well. And you want to make sure that when you're representing people, you're representing them. You know, you're making sure that their interests are number one. Right.
And you had touched on survival action versus wrongful death. How are the damages different? Survival damages versus, you know, damages that would be as a result of wrongful death claims.
Sure, yeah, and that gets back to economic models. So, and you know, don't want to get too far into the weeds because these are discussions that literally I spend hours with clients discussing. But you know, yes, each one of those claims carries with it a specific set of claims that you're entitled to make as damages. But this, you know, the simple thought is something like this: wrongful death is more about the tragic loss of this person and the value of the love and support that that person would have had with the family, but they're no longer here to do it. Survival is where you can go and look at the wages that a person made and claim those type of economic damages where, you know, a 22-year-old passes away, unfortunately, you know, leaves behind a spouse, a 1-year-old child. I mean, this person was going to work for the next 50 years easy, right? I mean, you know, the old days of retiring at 55, that doesn't happen very often. Most people just work now forever. And so that's the short answer of how you distinguish those damages. But just so you know, they're not exclusive. You get one or the other. I mean, it's usually inclusive. So you bring them together and you make all of those claims.
Right. And I know in the state of Texas, you're also entitled to exemplary damages as well. Can you elaborate on what those are?
So yeah, you know, exemplary damages are meant to teach somebody a lesson.
Okay.
And Texas legislature has actually made it pretty hard to get them, and there are caps on them. But the standard is, if you think of hurdles, you know, we all may not have wanted to be in track, but at some point in time in our lives, we were in elementary school or high school, and we had to go out and watch.
Yes.
We were all part of track, you know.
Right.
So,
we don't like to think about those days.
No, I mean, it's like, you know, here's short, fat Jeff running, trying to jump over that hurdle. So, you know, you think about hurdles, and you think about, okay, your simple car wreck where somebody runs into somebody in the back. That's basically, you know, one hurdle. It's not terribly high. It's not made high because you shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to work that hard, right? But the exemplary damages, the hurdle is way up here. You have to prove that the person that caused the injury really intended to cause it. So what I think of is like this. The best example is drunk driving. So, you know, the person goes out, they're overserved, they overserve themselves, whatever the situation is. They drink to excess, and they get behind the wheel, and God forbid they have a wreck. That's when you can claim exemplary damages. Because even though you may not have intended when you went out to drink to run over and kill somebody, you certainly acted with conscious indifference to the public, because you knew or should have known when you got in the car that you were intoxicated and you shouldn't be operating a car. And in this day and age with Uber and Lyft and other ride shares, there's no excuse for it, Brianna.
Right.
There's just not. But sadly, sometimes people and corporations act in a way where it's pretty obvious they just didn't care. They knew that there was a potential that someone would be hurt, and they just said, it doesn't matter.
And I know wrongful death for a personal injury claim, that would be in a civil court, but you can also try a wrongful death in a criminal court. Why is that important to know, and know the differences of what the results can be?
Sure, let's follow through with our drunk driver. So our drunk driver could actually be charged with criminal negligent homicide. And that criminal negligent homicide is basically a criminal case that involves the wrongful death. But the criminal case doesn't have anything to do with the civil case. In the criminal case, you know, the prosecutor, and I was one for, you know, some time early in my career, that was about putting people in jail. It wasn't about compensating victims for their losses.
Right.
It was about putting people in jail for violating a criminal or civil statute. And that's the reason why you're talking about basically two trains. One train is the government saying, hey, you violated the law and you're going to pay the consequences for that. You're going to pay your dues. And the other is the injury claim in a civil suit, where you really have to hire a lawyer, because in the criminal case, the government's doing all the work. But in the civil world, you got to hire a lawyer, someone like me, doesn't cost anything. We don't charge unless we collect. And then we pursue the claim on behalf of you to recover the damages you're entitled to.
Right. And when you are filing in Texas a wrongful death claim, is there a statute of limitations, or are there any exceptions to that?
Yeah, so let me tell you, when I sleep at night, the only thing that keeps me awake is the statute of limitations police. Because I worry, you know, and fortunately we have a tremendous database program here in the office to keep track of things. But yeah, most of the time you have 2 years from the date of an incident in the personal injury world before you must file a lawsuit to protect your rights. Now, sometimes you hear the word slander or defamation. Well, that's only a 1-year statute of limitations. Texas has 2 for car wrecks. Louisiana is 1. So yeah, state by state, it's very tricky as to what the limitation is. The best suggestion or advice I would give is there's no reason to delay having a conversation with someone like me, because it's free. I mean, we all will do a free consultation, and you can find out what's my time frame in which I must take some action. But yeah, that's the one thing, because if that time period goes past, Brianna, it's over. You know, it's gone.
Yeah. When somebody is looking for an attorney for a wrongful death claim, do you recommend they hold on to any documents throughout the process that would help them, or what should they prepare when meeting with an attorney?
Yeah, I'd be the ultimate hoarder. I wouldn't throw anything away. If you wrote down somebody's name on a scratch piece of paper, I'd keep it. You don't have to keep it in any kind of sophisticated filing format. You know, get yourself a plastic baggie, the big, baggie, and stick it all in there. I've had it come in all kinds of formats. I've seen people bring it in trash bags, and I've seen people bring it in 3-ring binders where I thought, oh, we should hire this person to work with us. But yeah, every piece of information is important. Don't discount a thing, right? And better to be safe than sorry. And now, with the way that we can scan information in and upload information, etc., there's literally use. Take a picture. I tell people all the time, take a picture of it on your cell phone. This is my cell phone number, which I give out to every client, and send it to me. Let me decide whether or not it's important.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today about wrongful death claims. We appreciate your time. And if you are in the state of Texas looking for personal injury representation, please consider Jeff Weinstein. Thank you again.
Brianna, I got to tell you, it's a tough subject, and you make it very easy to chat about. So thank you very much.
Yes. Well, same for you. Thank you.